What makes someone lie when they don't have to? What makes someone return to a crime scene or wait exactly 48 hours to report someone missing? True crime isn't just about what happened, it's about why. This is The Wanted Files, a research-driven podcast exploring unsolved cases and missing persons through evidence, timelines, and the psychology behind human behavior. No speculation, no sensationalism, just the documented facts and the patterns people leave behind when they think no one is looking. Behind every unanswered question, someone is still waiting. Follow The Wanted Files wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to Stars of the Golden Age, a show that highlights the lives of legends from film, music, and the birth of television during Hollywood's Golden Age, with a special emphasis on their lives behind the scenes. I am your host, Erin Carlson. Today, the conclusion of Judy Garland's story. This is part 4, so please go back and listen to parts 1 through 3 first if you haven't already. And then buckle up for this one. We left off on a happy note in our last episode, but today we'll be discussing a lot of really difficult moments in Judy's life. Before we begin, I just want to acknowledge again the wonderful biographers who helped me along in this journey through Judy Garland's life. Gerald Clark, the author of Get Happy, The Life of Judy Garland, and Gerald Frank, the author of Judy. Gerald Clark's book, Get Happy, written in 2000, was my primary source. My Judy Garland Bible. I was attached to it for a whole month. The Judy Garland Bible. The bibliography section alone is over 60 pages long. Mr. Frank, who I believe is still with us today, traveled the world to every place of importance in Judy's life story. And he interviewed hundreds of people over several years in order to get the complete story of Judy Garland. I am forever grateful for his devotion to Judy's legacy and for the hard work he put into sharing her story with us. Gerald Frank's book, Judy, was published in 1975, and he also conducted countless interviews with Judy's family and friends. He had the opportunity to speak to many people who, by 2000, were gone. Both books are incredible and highly recommended if you want to know every little detail about Judy Garland's life and experiences. Both books are absolute labors of love, and I am very thankful for Mr. Clark and Mr. Frank's hard work. In our last episode, we left Judy off at a happy and optimistic point in her life. She had dug herself out of the darkest point in her life up to that point, her dismissal from MGM and the ending of her second marriage to Vincent Minnelli. A point of her life when she was feeling unimaginable despair and helplessness as she navigated through these huge life changes, while struggling deeply with her mental health and substance abuse disorder. But she crawled her way out of the dark hole once again and created a brand new beginning for herself. She hit the stage and shared her voice, and her audiences in London, Glasgow, Dublin, and New York were overjoyed. All of her performances were sold out, and she was met with grand ovations and emotional tears as she shared her singing magic with her greatest fans. The fans who showed her that no matter what kind of turmoil she was experiencing in her life, they were going to be there to help pick her up. We left Judy Garland in a place of triumph and love and joy. It was February 1952, and Judy was 29 years old. After Judy Garland's 19-week engagement at the Palace Theater in New York, she was in for the real test of audience devotion, because her next engagement was in Los Angeles. New York is one thing, but Los Angeles is where Judy experienced her rise and her fall. LA had had a front row seat to every little setback she experienced as she grew up behind the gates of MGM. If she had been worried about New York's reception of her, that was nothing compared to her anxiety over Los Angeles' acceptance. Judy coped with very low self-worth for most of her life. She always strived for those feelings of acceptance, gratitude, and love. She had no idea just how loved she was, and just how much magic her voice sprinkled over her audiences. Word of that magic had reached LA, and everyone wanted to experience it. Within 1 hour of tickets going on sale for Judy's opening night performance in Los Angeles, 2,500 tickets were sold. Within 1 hour. Remember, this is 1952. People weren't just laying in bed ordering tickets from their phones. People had to show up at the box office. 2,500 tickets in 1 hour. At her opening night performance at the Philharmonic Auditorium in Los Angeles sat some old faces that she wasn't sure she'd see again. Arthur Freed and Louis B. Mayer from MGM. Also from her MGM family sat Joan Crawford and Lana Turner. I know I throw a lot of shade Louis B. Mayer's way, but I do think he wanted to see Judy succeed. Yes, I think he was responsible in a huge way for Judy's struggles with addiction and mental illness, but I don't think he likely knew exactly how dangerous his decisions for her life were at the time. I think deep down he knew his parts in the demons Judy had to battle on a daily basis. And him showing up to show his support was likely a small gesture to show he was sorry and he was rooting for her. See, I can say nice things about him. Judy sang to sold-out show after sold-out show in both Los Angeles and San Francisco. She was unstoppable. Plans were made to continue the show throughout the U.S., starting in Chicago. But that unstoppable energy turned out to be, in fact, stoppable. Because Judy discovered she was pregnant. Hot off the heels of her marriage to Vincent Minnelli, Judy began seeing Sid Luft, also known as Mr. Wrong and One Punch Sid. He was an intense man, a passionate man, but that passion and intensity helped Judy feel alive, as it does in the beginnings of a relationship. She may not have had long-term plans of marrying a man like Sid Luft, but that all changed when she learned she was having his baby. So, midway through her San Francisco engagement and 2 days before her 30th birthday, Judy Garland married Sidney Luft. Not many people were happy about this union. One magazine wrote, quote, "If Judy had $1 for every friend who's whispered in her ear that Sid was a far from ideal matrimonial bet, she'd have a hefty bankroll to show," end quote. Another wrote, quote, "So Sid Luft is what a girl finds over the rainbow," end quote. The sad part is, Judy knew, and Judy herself likely had some of the same thoughts. She'd been dating Sid long enough by this point. They were past that exciting honeymoon stage of their relationship. She had seen a little of why Sid had those nicknames that he did, and why many people had less than glowing things to say about him. He had weaseled his way into Judy's finances too, including taking control of the money coming in from her highly lucrative singing engagements, not paying her supporting cast and crew, and helping himself to expensive shopping sprees instead. He did support Judy emotionally, though, as best he could. But he also added a lot of chaos to what should have been a new, clean slate for her. She attributed her newfound success to the energy Sid had awoken in her. But it definitely came at a big price. Judy worked so hard and was taken advantage of once again. As Judy anticipated the birth of her second child during her final trimester in the fall of 1952, her new husband, Sid Luft, had convinced her that they should start their very own production company. So, just before the birth of their baby, Transcona Productions was born, and they struck a multi-picture deal with Warner Brothers. Little Lorna Luft was born on November 21st, 1952, and on the day she was to go home from the hospital, Sid was busy watching one of his horses race at the racetrack. Judy had to bring her newborn baby home alone. Judy had been okay emotionally. She still had some setbacks. But after Lorna was born, she experienced postpartum depression and really began to struggle again. And things only got worse when tragedy struck just 6 weeks after giving birth to Lorna. Judy's mother, Ethel, suffered a massive heart attack and died. She was only 59 years old. Judy had mostly estranged herself from her mother in the months leading up to her death, mostly due to the fact it sounds that Ethel was repeating history and trying to push Liza into show business against her parents' wishes. But now, Judy was hit with so much grief and so many emotions surrounding their difficult relationship. Ethel may not have been the most nurturing mother, but she was still Judy's mother. The first film to be made under the new production deal with Warner Brothers was the movie that everyone knew, Jack Warner, Judy, and Sid, would be the make it or break it for Judy Garland's big screen comeback. The big production remake of A Star is Born. Judy showed up on a Hollywood film studio lot for the first time in 3 years in October of 1953, making herself at home in Bette Davis's former dressing room on the Warner Brothers lot. A lot was riding on this picture. As Judy told one columnist, quote, "A Star is Born cannot merely be very good. It has to be the greatest," end quote. So, to make the greatest, they would need the greatest. Well, they already had Judy, so they were off to a good start. They got George Cukor on board to direct, and Ira Gershwin and Harold Arlen to write the songs. Now they needed a good, solid lead to play the tormented and struggling character of Norman Maine, a character that eerily mirrors Judy Garland's own life in so many ways. Judy and Sid really, really wanted Cary Grant to play the role. That would have been good. He turned it down. Marlon Brando and Laurence Olivier said no thank you as well. Judy's ex-flame, Tyrone Power, was attached to another project, otherwise he may have taken the role. Same with Richard Burton. Now, when I watch A Star is Born, I can't help but envision Frank Sinatra in the role of Norman Maine. And I think that's just because James Mason, who was ultimately cast in the role, reminds me so much of him. Well, Frank Sinatra actually did want to play the part. And so did Errol Flynn and Humphrey Bogart, who held the original version of A Star is Born as one of his favorite movies. Just imagine any one of those actors in the role of Norman Maine. Filming lasted 9 months, going way over schedule. Judy had started off wonderfully, but about a month into shooting, she was falling into her old habits from MGM, calling in sick or showing up late. Not nearly as bad, but it was happening more than ideal for the production. She had done so great with her live performances, and now back on a movie set, she became filled with those same anxieties and crippling insomnia once again. Despite seeming to be an unhealthy step for Judy Garland's mental health, returning to the movies, A Star is Born was a grand success and marked the hopeful revival of Judy's presence on the big screen. Although it was deemed too long by many viewers, it still held the audience's attention through every single moment, and still does to this day, thanks mostly to Judy's numbers in the film. Lengthy numbers. The Los Angeles Times reported after the Hollywood premiere of A Star is Born at the Pantages Theater that the opening was, quote, "probably the most remarkable premiere ever held in the film city," end quote. 20,000 people crowded outside the theater. Judy was back, and her fans welcomed her with open arms. Both Judy Garland and James Mason were nominated for Academy Awards for their work in A Star is Born. That was the same year that Dorothy Dandridge became the first Black woman to be nominated for a Best Actress Academy Award. It was 1954. Judy Garland was unable to make it to the ceremony, though. And not because she was off getting drunk like Norman Maine was in the on-screen Academy Award ceremony in A Star is Born, but because she was busy having another baby. Judy and Sid welcomed their second child together, Judy's third child, on March 29, 1954, a little boy they named Joseph. Just in case Judy won the Oscar that night, which was the day after Joseph was born, NBC built a cameraman tower outside of the hospital so they could have a camera shoot through the window of Judy's third-floor hospital room at the moment she won the award. Neither Judy Garland nor Dorothy Dandridge won that night. Grace Kelly did. Many people thought Judy should have won, like Groucho Marx, who said it was the biggest robbery since Brinks. And even Grace Kelly's own father, who said, quote, "There should have been 2 awards, and Judy Garland should have had one of them," end quote. Ultimately, Warner Brothers decided not to go ahead with the other projects they had tentatively planned with Judy and Sid's production company. There were too many red flags for them during the production of A Star is Born. The problem was, Judy and Sid were living the life of wealth they envisioned they would be for sure living. They had gotten way ahead of themselves. Sid was extremely in debt and kept making more debt, and they lived well beyond their means, with a huge home in Holmby Hills, with neighbors like Lana Turner, Gloria Graham, Bing Crosby, Van Johnson, and Bogey and Bacall. And they kept a big staff to run their home and their lives. Judy had no choice but to go on tour again with her live singing engagements. Only this time, the shows weren't sold out anymore. Even with the wonderful reception she had in her movie comeback, the fanfare had diminished a bit. I think it's safe to say that live performances in general were going through another grand transformation during the 1950s, just as they had when motion pictures first began dominating the entertainment industry. Only this time, it was the new guy in town: television. So, to television, Judy would go. CBS signed Judy Garland for 4 television specials in 1954, with plans to make 1 per year through 1958. However, disputes ended the contract a year early. Judy continued her live engagements as well, having a big boost in ticket sales thanks to those television specials. In fact, when she made her Las Vegas debut at the New Frontier, she made an earnings record for all of Las Vegas entertainment history. After 5 weeks in Vegas, she returned to her beloved Palace Theater in New York with great love. Her original 8-week booking turned into 17 weeks. New York loved Judy Garland. Things went great for a few years on the road, but by the end of the 1950s, Judy was clearly burnt out and struggling with the same demons who had been haunting her for most of her life. And the worst part was, through all the sacrifices she had made giving her energy to the stage, she wasn't seeing a cent of the profits. She was being horribly mismanaged, and her manager was her own husband. Judy herself lived pretty humbly. She didn't feel she needed much to be happy. Sid, on the other hand, had very expensive tastes, and those taste buds were satisfied by his wife's hard work. Alongside his expensive tastes was a very dangerous gambling habit, which is where the bulk of Judy's money went. Although Sid was squandering away every cent of Judy's fortune, and the couple was increasingly getting into heated fights, Judy, for the most part, still publicly sang the praises of her husband. She said he was very good for her and they were deeply in love. But behind closed doors, the relationship wasn't so sparkly. Sid often stormed out of the house after arguments, not to be seen again for days, and Judy spent many nights at the home of her friends, Van and Evie Johnson. And both of them were having affairs. While Judy's third marriage took a nosedive and she worked herself to the bone for little return, the years of abuse to her body began to really show their damage. Judy was just 37 years old in November of 1959, but she looked far older than her age and her body was clearly going through major trauma. She had gained a considerable amount of weight after A Star is Born. Her skin looked unhealthy and her hair was thinning badly. I'm not saying these things to shame Judy's physical appearance. I'm just saying it to show the physical toll Judy's lifelong reliance on pills and her struggles with mental illness had taken on her. And during her marriage to Sid Luft, she had made alcohol a huge part of her life as well, vodka. And the variety of pills she was consuming on a regular basis was multiplying. She couldn't live without pills and alcohol, and that is a very dangerous situation to be in. By the end of 1959, her liver was failing. The liver is a crucial component in our bodies. We need a functioning liver to survive. And Judy's had been horribly abused by pills and alcohol for essentially her entire life, since she was 9 years old, thanks to her mother. So in November of 1959, 37-year-old Judy Garland was admitted to the hospital to help support her failing liver, and she stayed there for almost 2 months. This was the beginning of the slow end for Judy Garland. As she left the hospital, still very weak and very ill, her doctors told her she probably only had 5 years left to live. And if she did live longer than 5 years, her quality of life would not be very good at all. The doctors weren't too far off with their prediction. Judy's long stay in the hospital and coming face to face with the reality of her health did something to her. Something Joe Mankiewicz had wanted her to do years earlier. She was going to find herself and try to get to know that person. The woman who, for all her life, was constantly surrounded by others, who felt the need to be surrounded by others, was going to boldly retreat alone and sit with her inner self for a while. And she was retreating a great distance to do it. London, the city that had always made her feel the most loved and accepted. She left Sid and the kids behind in Los Angeles and, although scared of flying, flew across the nation and then across the ocean all by herself. It was just what her soul needed, and she even returned to the stage of the Palladium for a sold-out performance. Sid and the kids did eventually join her, but she had the solo retreat she needed to revitalize her soul. The rejuvenation she experienced in her new surroundings gave her a whole new energy for life and singing. She got a new manager to replace Sid, and he set up a U.S. concert tour for her in 1961. And she also returned to the big screen for the first time in 6 years for Judgment at Nuremberg, alongside a star-studded cast: Spencer Tracy, Burt Lancaster, Marlene Dietrich, and Montgomery Clift. The best performance of her career came on April 23, 1961, as she graced the stage of Carnegie Hall. She sang 26 songs over 2.5 hours. After song 24, she gave a little giggle and said she thought she'd run out of songs to sing. A man yelled from the crowd, "Just stand there." Judy's fans loved her so much. They loved her so much that they would be happy just watching her stand on the stage. This is how biographer Gerald Clark described the magic of that night at Carnegie Hall. Quote, "At Carnegie Hall, greatness, true greatness, was hers. And on that soft April night in Manhattan, she ascended to heights untrodden by any of her contemporaries. Her master of herself, her songs, and her audience was complete. She had shown what she could do and what she could be, and through the miracle of music, she had opened a brief, shivery window into a realm beyond ordinary understanding." End quote. I listened to some of this on Spotify, and I can't even imagine being there in person. Go look it up and listen to Over the Rainbow, and just imagine that was towards the end of her performance. It must have been so magical. Judy was back again, and with her newest comeback, she said goodbye to husband number 3. After over a decade together, Judy decided Sid Luft wasn't providing anything positive to her life, so they separated and she filed for divorce. In 1963, 41-year-old Judy Garland was offered a very tempting proposal: her own weekly television show, one that all the networks wanted to air and sent them into a bidding war over. It was an offer Judy couldn't refuse. CBS won the bidding war, paying Judy $25,000 to $30,000 per show, with the show scheduled to run weekly for 26 weeks each year. Today, that would adjust to $267,000 to $320,000 per show. And she would be the owner of the tapes, so she could use them to make more money in syndication. She would be set. She could replenish the wealth she should have had all these years. And maybe it could stay safe now that Sid Luft was out of her life. The Judy Garland Show premiered on CBS on September 29th, 1963, to much excitement and much nervousness. Many people didn't think Judy could handle the demanding schedule of a weekly television show. Judy was healthy and happy. She had trimmed down her weight again and was feeling great. She was ready to show the naysayers wrong. Her very first guest on her show was one of her very first co-stars, Mickey Rooney. The show started out great, but then after 6 weeks, CBS completely changed out the production team and the premise of the show. With the new direction, Judy was frequently made fun of for comedy. Things like her delicate mental health, her weight fluctuations, and her frequent absences from film sets years prior were turned into jokes at her expense, on her own show. Things she struggled deeply with and tried so hard to overcome. Luckily, that format only lasted 7 episodes before that producer was let go and replaced. Judy was really trying, but the network was making it really difficult for her. One constant in her life during this time of stress with the show was her dear friend and confidant, President John F. Kennedy. He helped her in how to navigate the difficulties she was faced with at CBS from a business perspective. But then came that fateful November day in 1963. An entire nation wept the day John F. Kennedy was assassinated. But a select few wept a little harder than the rest. Those who knew and loved the president. And Judy Garland was one of those people. Judy wanted to pay a tribute to her friend and the nation's president by dedicating the following week's show to him through a series of patriotic songs. CBS said no. By the time the episode was broadcast, they said President John F. Kennedy would be long forgotten. She was able to sing one song for him, one of my favorites, Battle Hymn of the Republic. The Judy Garland Show only lasted for 1 season. It was set up for failure right from the start, and all of the drama eventually led Judy to react in similar fashion to her MGM days when she hated going to work. She became unreliable. What she needed was a man. That's what she always thought, at least. So, as her television show came to a disappointing end, she reconciled with her estranged husband, Sid Luft, just when she seemed to be on a positive, independent track. So, not only was the man who loved to spend her money back in her life, but she discovered her agent was helping himself to her money as well. The agent who she also had a romantic relationship with for a time, David Begelman. He ended up in some pretty deep embezzlement water during the 1970s. Judy was bringing in big money each week during her television show. All of her concerts had earned her big money. And still, after all of her hard work sharing her voice with the world, she was still broke, in crippling debt. All of her hope had dissipated, and her reconciliation with Sid Luft faded quickly from excitement. This time, they were really done. Enter husband number 4, 33-year-old Mark Herron. As she started a new life with Mark Herron after their marriage on May 19, 1965, everything else in her life began to spiral downward again. She received terrible receptions in both Australia and China after being in a bad state on stage. She was in great financial trouble, and she fell into a deep depression. She was hospitalized after taking too many pills and cutting her wrist. Although Judy had experienced long stretches of good times, she had never been able to put aside her need for her pills. Plus, she'd adopted new ones along the way. And allegedly, her maid found heroin and morphine hidden in her home as well. Now in her 40s, and having been singing powerfully for her entire life, Judy's drug use and lifestyle had begun to take a toll on her voice. And that terrified Judy because she always said, "Without my voice, I'm nothing." Judy and Mark's marriage was not blissful. It was not blissful in their months of dating before they said I do, but they still said I do. Like Vincent Minnelli, Judy's second husband, Mark Herron's sexuality has been the subject of much debate. He was gay, and many people believed he married Judy only to further his own hopeful acting career. But he was in for a lot of ups and downs along the way if that was his motivation. Judy was not well. She spent days at a time in bed, and her mood swings were almost unbearable. All of the betrayals of her life had seemed to boil to the surface during this time because she was filled with so much anger and rage. "I'm angry," she once yelled. "I've been insulted, slandered, humiliated. I wanted to believe, and I tried my damnedest to believe in that rainbow that I tried to get over. And I couldn't. I hate anybody's guts who used me, because I wanted to be a nice girl." She really did, all those years ago, just want to be a nice girl. She was a nice girl. She was in there somewhere all along. Now that she was looking back and realizing how terribly she'd been used and abused and controlled and manipulated, she was mad. And her new husband was usually the recipient of all that anger. It was too hostile. And to make matters worse, Mark was cheating on Judy with her daughter Liza's fiancé, Peter Allen. So 3 generations of women, Ethel, Judy, and Liza, all married men who also enjoyed the company of other men, which was very scandalous. The newlyweds Judy and Mark separated just 5 months after they were married. Mark returned to his previous partner, Henry Brandon, and lived with him until Henry's death 24 years later. During her emotional difficulties during the mid-1960s, Judy's children were sadly positioned right in the middle of the chaos. And that can be very frightening for children, and very dangerous for their social and emotional development. Liza was entering adulthood by then and beginning a singing and acting career of her own. Before she left home, however, she was very well versed with a stomach pump, having to use it on many occasions to save her mother. Lorna and Joey, Judy's children with Sid Luft, were 14 and 11 in 1966, and they witnessed a lot of really terrifying things within the walls of their home. Screaming matches, accusations, smashing dishes, even starting fires. They were constantly walking on eggshells because any small thing would set their mother off into fierce anger. As if taking pages directly out of Judy's own childhood book, she would wake her children from their sound sleep in rages, much scarier than the ones she experienced with her own mother, because Judy was often experiencing hallucinations. It was really, really scary for her children. Back to those fires. The first time Judy took a match to a structure was while on vacation in Hawaii with Mark. She was angry at Mark and started his closet full of clothing on fire. And guess who just happened to be their next-door neighbor while vacationing in Hawaii? Steve McQueen. He arrived before firefighters could arrive, and Judy did not appreciate him getting involved in her business. "Don't be a hero, Steve," she snapped at him. "This isn't the movies. Just sit down and wait for the fire department like everyone else." I'm sorry, I know this is extremely traumatic, but that kind of made me giggle. Just the thought of little tiny Judy Garland telling Steve McQueen to sit down and shut up. The other fire she set in her own bedroom. She was really unwell. She was unpredictable and rude much of the time, especially to those close to her, including the staff she kept employed in her home. The staff was also chipping in their own money at times to feed and clothe Judy's children. Judy was broke, and there was often no food in the house. As she ran out of money to pay the household staff, one by one, they walked out the door. I think they stayed a little longer than they would have because of the children. Even Judy's fans pitched in to pay her telephone and electric bills some months. Judy had never learned how to be responsible with money. She always trusted that to someone else. The problem was, she put that trust in the wrong people for decades. It finally came to the point where Judy had to sell her home. She could have been one of the wealthiest women in the country, but she had virtually nothing. Judy's next marriage wasn't really a marriage, not legally at least. It was her press agent, Tom Green. After her short marriage to Mark Herron, Judy grew closer to Tom and they entered into a wild love affair. Anxious to pledge their love for each other, they had the engineer of the super chief preside over a wedding ceremony for them inside the dining car on a train headed for New York in December of 1966. It wasn't a legal marriage, but they went about life as husband and wife from the moment of their train ceremony on. The relationship didn't last. It was always fun and exciting in the first months of a new relationship for Judy. But once that initial high wore off, things usually spiraled down pretty quickly. More accurately would be to say Judy spiraled quickly. Her behavior was becoming more erratic by the day by 1967, and she was wearing out her welcome with anyone who had tried to help her. She was likely completely unaware of her harsh behavior to those she loved and were trying to care for her. It finally came to the point where both of her younger children couldn't handle living with her anymore, especially since she had lost her home and hopped from one apartment or hotel to the next, and even one city to the next. As her son Joey ran out frightened from her apartment one night with nothing but pajama bottoms on, Judy threw a butcher knife at him. He continued running until he reached the hotel his father was staying at. Things were really, really bad. Rock bottom wasn't too far away. During this extremely troubling time, Judy continued to bounce from man to man. She always needed that man in her life, that exhilaration from the first days of a new love. She wanted to marry every single one of them. She wanted them to want her forever. But as her erratic behavior worsened, the men in her life could handle her energy less and less. Judy lived in 4 dimensions, one boyfriend said. They all thought they could save her, but they quickly realized she was maybe too far damaged to save. I know this all sounds very harsh, and trust me, I'm not trying to shame Judy's memory at all. I love her. But she was in a terrible, terrible place. She was treating the people in her life very badly. The lifetime of addiction and mental illness was showing its face in near constant and very frightening ways. It was really difficult to be in Judy Garland's circle during the mid-1960s. Her oldest daughter, Liza, had married, and she immediately set up some pretty strong boundaries with her mother. She had taken care of her mother for much of her life, and she wanted to take care of herself now. Judy had always had friends in her corner, friends there to pick her up when she fell and help her get back on her feet. But most people can only handle so much. Years and years of picking her up, only to be treated like dirt when she was in her mental lows. It's absolutely understandable why her friends began disappearing, one by one. Judy was very much alone, except for the men in her life. And the new man who appeared in her life in late 1968 was a 34-year-old piano player and nightclub manager named Mickey Deans. While Judy's previous boyfriend had tried to keep her away from pills, The manner in which Judy met Mickey Deans was centered completely around pills. Mickey had connections, so when Judy needed some goods while in New York, a mutual friend made a call to Mickey Deans, and he soon appeared at Jody's hotel suite door with a big supply of amphetamines. Judy's romance with Mickey Deans overlapped her previous romance while that poor guy laid in bed very sick with influenza. But just a couple of weeks after meeting Mickey Deans, Judy was scheduled to leave for London to fulfill a 5-week engagement at the Talk of the Town Supper Club. She was still performing, but her big venue days were mostly behind her. Still, the Talk of the Town engagement was going to pay very well. Relishing in this honeymoon stage of their relationship, Mickey suggested to Judy that he go to London with her and they get married. They'd known each other for 2 weeks. The London engagement started off well, as they always do, but within a few weeks, Judy was showing up very late for her scheduled performance and met with very disappointed and angry audiences. When she had breadsticks thrown at her one night after showing up an hour late and not in great performing state, she walked off and didn't return for several more days. As for the English wedding Judy and Mickey were excited for, Judy was still legally married to her previous husband, Mark. So she and Mickey had a ceremony on January 9th, 1969, but they weren't able to make it legal until March 15th, 1969. They held a reception at an elegant restaurant in London's West End, but nobody showed up. Many were invited, but only a few people came. Judy had burned too many bridges. A London columnist who had showed up for the event called it the saddest and most pathetic party I have ever attended. Following Judy's 5th wedding, she and Mickey had a short honeymoon in Paris, and then Judy had a series of concerts planned on a Scandinavian tour. And that, from the sounds of it, actually went very well. After a performance in Stockholm, Judy received a thunderous 12-minute ovation. She still had it in her, just not all the time. She was a roller coaster with extreme highs and extreme lows, and a whole lot of speed between the two. But if there was one place that could keep the calmest and most balanced version of Judy Garland present, it was London. So after the Scandinavian tour, Judy and Mickey, or Gladys and George as they called themselves, decided to stay in London and begin their new life together as husband and wife there. Although Judy had become very unpredictable and exhibited frequent erratic behaviors, she was still that sweet, loving Judy with a big, wholesome heart. That girl was still in there. She had just been covered up by many, many layers of toxicity by this point. She desperately wanted to be free of her emotional torments, but the addiction and trauma was just too fierce. But if there was a good balance to be found, she knew she could find it in London. Here's what she said, quote, "I don't know if London still needs me, but I certainly need it. It's good and kind to me. I feel at home here. The people understand me, and I'm not aware of the cruelty I've so often felt in the States. I've reached a point in my life where the most precious thing is compassion, and I get this here." End quote. Judy Garland found at least some comfort and peace in those few months in London. It was June 22nd, 1969. The phone rang in Judy and Mickey's Mew cottage in London around 10:30 a.m. Mickey answered, and it was friends from Los Angeles wanting to speak to Judy. They were partying and having a great time, several hours earlier than London, so still enjoying the festivities of the night. Mickey looked for Judy, but she had locked herself in the bathroom. This was common, but he couldn't get a response from her. Growing concerned, Mickey climbed onto the roof of the cottage to get a view into the bathroom window. He saw Judy passed out. He gained access to the bathroom. Judy wasn't passed out. Judy Garland was dead. and it was later determined that she had been gone for several hours. Accidental overdose of barbiturates. The pills finally won the long and painful battle. In an eerie statement 2 years prior, reflecting on the death of Marilyn Monroe 5 years earlier, Judy said this, knowing all too well from many personal experiences. Quote, "You take a couple of sleeping pills and you wake up in 20 minutes and forget you've taken them. So you take a couple more, and the next thing you know, you've taken too many." End quote. This, in the medical examiner's opinion, is exactly what happened to Judy Garland. Judy Garland had just turned 47 years old, 10 days before she died. Judy's body was flown back to New York. She was laid in state where an estimated 22,000 people visited to pay their final respects. And another 2,000 had to be turned away when it was time to close her casket and hold her funeral service. Mourners were asked not to wear black, to wear cheerful colors. So the pews were filled with colorful florals and cheerful pastels. Judy's casket was covered with a blanket of yellow roses, her favorite color. Her funeral service ended with the Battle Hymn of the Republic, as did my dad's. That's how he wanted to be sent off as well. Judy Garland was sent off with love and respect, with sorrow and sadness, with millions of heavy hearts weighing heavy with the tragedy her life was, and many wonders of what could have been if only she had been able to choose her own path. Instead, Judy Garland gave her entire life to others, to her mother, to the small stages with the Gump sisters, to MGM, to the Palladium and the Palace, to all the men she wanted so desperately to love and care for her, and to us, even to those of us who were not yet alive during her lifetime. A legend like Judy Garland lives on forever. And now I would like to share a few other interesting things I learned during my research. Bullet point number 1. Judy Garland was afraid of speed. She preferred to avoid freeways if ever possible and was afraid to fly. She did, of course, when necessary, but it gave her a lot of anxiety. Bullet point number 2. You know how I feel about the executives at MGM and their role in Judy's lifelong battle against substance abuse disorder. Well, while she was under contract with MGM, before she was even a legal adult, studio execs had 6 different doctors prescribing pills to Judy, each of them not knowing of the other 5 doing the same. Bullet point number 3. On the day Judy Garland died, on June 22, 1969, a tornado swept through a portion of Kansas. Bullet point number 4. Judy Garland's A Star is Born co-star James Mason delivered a eulogy at her funeral. Liza Minnelli had originally wanted Mickey Rooney to speak, but both were afraid he wouldn't be able to get through the eulogy without breaking down. Judy's great gift, Mason said, was that she could wring tears out of the hearts of rock. She was the most sympathetic, the funniest, the sharpest, and the most stimulating woman I ever knew. Bullet point number 5. Judy wasn't originally laid to rest at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, where she is today. She was laid to rest in New York until 2017, but she was relocated to the Hollywood Forever Cemetery where there would be room in the mausoleum for her children. Mickey Rooney is laid to rest just around the corner from Judy, if I remember correctly. And a memorial stone for Toto is nearby as well. In conclusion, after taking this long journey through Judy Garland's life, my soul is filled with a mixture of a lot of different emotions. I feel a lot of sadness, but what I feel mostly is I just feel mad. I feel angry. angry at all the people who wronged Judy, who took advantage of her vulnerabilities. Almost everyone who was supposed to be protecting and nurturing her was harming her and setting her up for certain failure. It's as if there was a mission to intentionally dismantle any chance for success or happiness for her. I think back to the descriptions of 13-year-old Judy Garland by those who roamed the spaces of MGM alongside her. Warm, loving, funny, cheerful, and possessing a natural effervescence. That warmth and love was a part of her very soul that never left. But somewhere along the way, I think very early on in her life at MGM, that effervescence and cheer was lost. Nope, not lost. It was stripped away. It was stripped away by every single man of power who touched her or raped her. It was taken away by every man she loved who hurt her. It was taken away by her mother and her first husband when they decided that the baby growing inside of her body, her baby, did not deserve to live. It was stripped away, piece by piece, with every little pill that entered her body at the hands of her mother and her employer. That cheer and effervescence was taken from her long before she became an adult, by the adults in her life. And that just makes me so mad. And amongst the sadness I feel for Judy, I'm so sad she was never able to overcome her addiction and her emotional demons. I'm sad she never thought she was good enough to live a happy life without a partner by her side. That she was never quite able to figure out how to love herself. I recently visited Judy's grave at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. It was a very emotional experience. As I stood before her, I felt so much emotion over the life she was robbed of. She is so beloved in death, and I wish she could have felt a fraction of that love in life. She searched for love and acceptance and peace from the second her father died. Judy was in love with love, as someone close to her said. I want to read you a passage from Gerald Frank's book, Judy. Quote, "Seeking love, she had many men, yet she never found it. For finding it, she could not believe it. Or if she believed it, suspected it, denied it. One wonders, Frances Gumm, Judy Garland. Was there ever a Judy Garland? Was it not all Frances Gumm, endlessly playing the part, endlessly in search of herself? Yet there she was, in a coffin, Judy Garland. There were thousands outside blocking the streets. There were millions all over the world, mourning and missing her. She had taken from life, despite everything, what she had wanted. Despite unimaginable ordeals, she was gaiety, magic, wonder, all caught up in this incredible child." End quote. In my heart, Judy Garland, in death, in the afterlife I hope she found, is little Frances Baby Gumm, eternally in the only place she ever felt carefree happiness, in her Minnesota childhood home in the sky. I hope she found the peace she was always searching for, the peace she deserved. Thank you, Judy Garland, for all the sacrifices you made so others could climb their own mountains. Thank you for shining through your trauma and hurt and sharing your voice with the world, your magic. From the descriptions I have read about the magical experience it was to see you sing in person, I wish so badly I could have had the chance to experience that. I hope you know how loved you were, still are, and always will be. And thank you all for listening. If you are struggling with mental illness or substance abuse disorder, please seek help. You can text 988, or you can call 988, or you can go to the 988 Lifeline website at 988lifeline.org to chat with a counselor. Judy Garland didn't have the outstanding resources available today, but we do. Reach for the positive in every day, be kind to everyone you encounter, always love yourself, and have a great rest of your week. For this episode, I used 2 wonderful Judy Garland biographies: Get Happy, The Life of Judy Garland by Gerald Clark, and Judy by Gerald Frank. I also used information I acquired from the Judy Garland Museum and Childhood Home in Grand Rapids, Minnesota. And I listened to Judy's beautiful 1961 Carnegie Hall performance on Spotify. And I urge you all to do the same. If nothing else, listen to Over the Rainbow. And finally, IMDB.